1600.
WWRL.
New York.
An Access One communications radio station.
Kurland's on the air. It's Yetta Kurland live. Yetta Kurland, listen in.
Good evening, New York. Hope you're enjoying the spring-like weather today, and welcome to this week's edition of Yetta Kurland Live. I am your host, Yetta Kurland, and tonight we'll speak with City Councilmember Vincent Gentile, Eileen Muller, and Valentin of DC 37 about the future of New York City Libraries. Then we'll hear from David Braun, president and co-founder of United for Action, about fracking in New York and the upcoming sequel to the film Gasland. I first want to thank our media partners, Go Magazine, Labor Press, the Soho Journal, Westview News, and the New Civil Rights Movement for helping make this show happen, as well as our community sponsor, The Ritz. You can pick up a copy of the Westview News at 69 Charles Street. Check out Go Magazine at your local newsstand or at gomag.com, the Soho Journal at sohojournal.com, the New Civil Rights Movement at the newcivilrightsmovement.com, and Labor Press is at laborpress.org. Also, you can listen to us live stream at WWRL1600.com. And please join us on Facebook at Yetta Kurland Live, on Twitter at Yetta Kurland, and check us out on the Huffington Post at huffingtonpost.com/Yetta. This week in the news, France's Senate passed a marriage equality bill, putting more meaning into the phrase liberté, égalité, fraternité. I don't know where sororité is. But meanwhile, in Washington, Senate negotiators appear to be planning to exclude LGBT families from the immigration reform legislation being discussed. An oil pipeline burst in Arkansas, and a study in the UK confirmed links between hydrofracking and small earthquakes. Here in New York, corruption scandals continued to rock elected officials from Albany to City Hall, including the arrest and retirement of 2 more tainted assembly members, just as citizens groups were launching an effort for clean elections. The mayoral race got a jolt today as former Congressman Anthony Weiner announced his interest in running for mayor in a long-time profile in the New York Times. We'll be talking about politics, energy, money, libraries, and more here on Yetta Kurland Live with Vincent Gentile, Eileen Muller, Valentin, David Braun, and you, the listener. Please call in with questions or comments. The number to do that is 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. 0975. Let's get to our first segment. I'll start with Vincent Gentile. He's a lifetime public servant in New York City. He's represented Southwest Brooklyn on the City Council since 2003. Before that, he was serving in the New York State Senate. Councilmember Gentile is chair of a new library subcommittee, and we're delighted it brings him on air with Yetta Kurland Live tonight. Joining us as well are 2 leaders in the fight for better library services. First, Eileen Muller is a librarian at the Brooklyn Public Library and the president of DC 37 Local 1482, the Brooklyn Library Guild. Also, Valentin, or Val Cologne, is the president of DC 37 Local 1930. That's the New York Public Library Guild. If you've got questions or comments about libraries for New York City Councilmember Gentile, Eileen or Valentin or Val, may I call you Val?
Yes.
Okay. Please call in 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Councilmember, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yetta, it's really good to be with you and good to hear you on the radio.
Yes, and Eileen and Val, thanks for joining us as well. I know it's been a long day for both of you, so I appreciate your taking time to come into the studio and talk with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And it's important. Yeah, you guys are doing some really important work, so let's get started talking about this. Eileen, what is the role of libraries in New York City today?
Oh, my goodness, it's an incredibly important role. We, of course, service the public, patrons coming into the library every day, every group of people, from toddlers to senior citizens. like a community area. People come in and meet their neighbors, talk to their neighbors, as well as learn to use the internet, have computers for themselves to use, and of course use the old-fashioned book.
Yeah.
Most importantly.
Well, the books obviously are important, but I think, in this day and age, books are important and used, but there's also the internet and commuter services and after-school programs. I mean, the library has quite actually expanded in the day and age of technology. We
certainly have. We are busy from the time we open up the door. We're even busy before we open up the door. We have people waiting outside of the libraries to come in and use the libraries. And because of Wi-Fi, they're actually able to stand outside of the buildings and use the library's computer Wi-Fi before the libraries were even open.
And Councilmember, what's the basis for this new subcommittee? How did that get started? Was there a need for it, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, back in 2006. We, obviously there's always been a push for more library service, more library funding, and we thought that the Cultural Affairs Committee, which includes libraries, could focus more directly on just the libraries, and the thought was by the Speaker to form this subcommittee, the Select Committee on Libraries, and asked me to chair it. So I'm very pleased and got to work with great people like Val and Eileen and all the the people that they represent and the librarians that I've met have impressed me so much in the years that I've been chair of the committee.
Library services are just very valuable. Knowing how to get information, access information, and make that information available in the day and age of technology, we actually have more access to information and more need for these library services. Val, what are some of the biggest difficulties that libraries are facing today?
Well, the uncertainty of whether we will be able to open and maintain the hours that we do, or just to expand our hours to make it more accessible to people.
So there's a real attack on the funding for libraries where you read about closures and the fight to try to keep libraries open. Why is that happening? What's going on there?
Again, it's the money. Mm-hmm. It all boils down to money. If we don't have the budget, the funding to maintain the branches' doors open or have them staffed, that's a security issue.
Sure.
And
it's really
the people there
the typical budget dance of the mayor, and this pattern has been repeated over and over again in the last couple of number of years of the Bloomberg administration, where each year the executive preliminary budget would propose massive amounts of cuts to the three library systems, and we spend all spring into June fighting to put the money back that had been restored the year before and taken out again the following year. And we spend all our time trying to put all that money back in, and we really never make any progress because we're trying to always catch up to where we were the previous year.
Where does the budget? What does the budget picture look like right now?
$106 million proposed cut to the three library systems. That would decimate and devastate the library systems. We would probably, in the same period of time now that Washington, D.C. has just announced that they are committed to 7-day library service in Washington, D.C., if we were to impose this $106 million cut, we would probably see library services in New York City cut to 3, maybe 4 days at the most.
Wow, that would have a severe impact on the lives of children, on the lives of adults, on the lives of people who depend on these services.
Right. And actually, in the fiscal year 2011, we had 40.5 million visitors to the 206 branches of the three library systems.
Wow.
40.5 million people came into the libraries to use the libraries for the variety of services that we offer.
Yeah, and that's a significant number because you think about it, that 40.5 million is more than all the sports teams and all the cultural institutions visitors put together. You add up all the visitors to the cultural institutions and to the sports teams in New York City, you still don't get as many visitors as the three library systems have gotten over the years.
You're listening to Councilmember Vincent Gentile, Eileen Muller, and Valentin Cologne from DC 37 here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600 AM Equality Pride Radio. Call in with questions or comments, 212-868 866-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. That's a tremendous amount of people using your services.
Yes.
And if these cuts were to go through, how would that impact, other than the cutbacks? Are there losses in some of the programming that would be totally devastating?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. The programs would be cut.
And why? I mean, so the mayor proposes these budgets, $106 million.
$106 million.
He doesn't really expect that there's going to be $106 million cut in library services, right?
Well, he's hoping that the council will restore it. But again, he's putting it out.
So as the years go on, do you guys kind of go backwards in the funding, or do you get back to where you need?
Yeah, lately it's been that.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the past 5 years, the mayor has proposed about $360 million total in cuts to libraries, and the city council has restored about $300 million of the 360. So in essence, it's about a $60 million loss over the last couple of years for the three library systems, and that has now they've gotten to the point where they cannot sustain further losses to their revenue.
Let me. Did you want to say something?
What I was going to add as well is that we've lost about 20% of our staff. People haven't been laid off, but through attrition. They've left for whatever the reason is. They have left, and
you don't have the resources to hire.
We do not have the resources to hire people again. So we have people doing, a lot more with less. But we've reached the point where we can't do any more. With this as few dollars as we have.
As overextended as you are. Let me put this in a context of a bigger picture in New York City. I was just at a rally this afternoon. There's a post office in my neighborhood that they're trying to close. Obviously, we lost a major hospital in our area. There's a hospital being closed in Brooklyn right now, the Litch Hospital Services. Why are all these public services seeming to be unable to maintain themselves in a city that's, the greatest city in the world?
Well, that's the question a lot of us ask, especially the staff, the members who are out there serving the front line, serving the public, the community.
I mean, you would argue New York City is doing better than it's ever done before. We see more wealth in the city. Some of the highest zip codes with the greatest wealth in the world. It seems like there's more money in this city to be able to put into the types of public services that, frankly, enrich all of us.
Well, certainly, they should be putting that money back into the public places for people to go, whether it be a hospital, whether it's a library, whatever the case might be. The money should be going back in. It doesn't seem to be going back in. They're looking to redevelop some of these properties as well, which is another issue that we're looking at. You might have a post office, you might have a hospital in very, very prime neighborhoods that are now being hit because that property value is very great. So are we looking to do away with these wonderful free services because of the value of the property?
Are you seeing that happen with libraries as well?
I'm seeing it happen with a lot of things, yes.
Wow. Yeah. Well, this is the thing is, even people living in the luxury condominiums that go up, they need libraries, they need post offices, they need hospitals. Let's hear from you, the callers. How are libraries important to you in your lives? Call in with questions or comments, 212-868-0975, 212-868-0975. Let's go to our first caller. We're going to go to Ed from the Upper West Side. Ed, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi. I think that your listeners may be interested in knowing that back in the previous century, two White House conferences on libraries tried, but failed, to get the word free taken out of the library. The White House under Jimmy Carter and the White House under George H.W. Bush had White House conferences, and they tried to get the word free taken out because they wanted to charge for libraries so that, God forbid, poor people wouldn't busy themselves with reading library books. And we were able to stop that. But there are forces out there who think that the free public library is an abomination. It is not just a money-saving thing. There are people who actually want to eliminate the free public library, and people should be on guard about that.
Well, thank you for the comment. And I am also, as I'm listening, thinking about the CUNY system, which is, its mission was initially to be able to bring in people to get a liberal arts education for free.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for your comment, Ed.
Okay.
And you know, frankly, it's not the most expensive thing to run a library. It seems like a pretty cost-effective way to get information, provide public resources to people in the community.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
Yeah.
It would be a very, very easy way to to continue with a wonderful, wonderful gift to the community. Actually, just as a little interest, property values usually go up when there's a library in your neighborhood.
Good point. Good point. And Val, maybe you could just talk about some of the services specifically that community members use, rely on, and need for their lives day in and day out.
The biggest thing right now is the computers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing, because it's not just the teenagers and the children who are using them. You have adults who are looking for employment.
Yeah.
Who have to decide, well, do I pay rent or can I pay for internet service? So they come to us. They don't pay. They can use it. They need help doing a resume. We're there.
Yeah.
And they need a place to put their, job application in, whether it's Monster or whatever. And sure enough, they come to us.
You would be surprised, Yetta, at how many people in the neighborhoods that we deal with do not have internet at home. They might have the computer. If they're lucky enough, they might have an outdated computer, but they don't have the money to really afford the internet services. So that's one of the really such an important service that we do offer for free.
Negative trickle-down effects of library closures. You're listening to Councilmember Vincent Gentile, Eileen Muller, and Valentin Cologne of DC 37 here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. Call in. Let us know how libraries affect you. 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Councilmember, before we go to our next caller, what is baseline funding, and how would that help the situation?
Well, baseline funding, in essence, would end what we call the budget dance every year. As I said, every year we put back the money that the mayor has taken out from the previous budget.
Right.
And we spend all our time trying to get us back to where we used to be in the previous budget, in the new budget, and when really never catching up and never moving forward.
Right.
So baseline funding really says that the money that we agree upon in a current budget will be the starting point of the budget for the next year, for in this case being libraries, and we would start at that point rather than have to try to catch up and make up everything that the mayor has cut out from the previous budget, which we fought to put in, and then the next year he takes it out.
Right. And as Val said, losing ground sometimes in the process.
Correct.
Right.
Let's go to our next caller. We're going to go to Mike from Brooklyn. Mike, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Thank you. Hi, Councilman. How are you?
How are you?
My question is, how does these cuts, how does it relate to I guess, historically, and how does this compare to some other, big cities and their budgets throughout the nation?
Well, as I said, Washington, D.C. now has said that they are committed, the government in Washington, D.C., the city government, is committed to doing 7-day-a-week library service. Now, granted, they have a much smaller system than we have here in New York, and then we have the largest system in the country where you put all three library systems together in New York. But Washington, D.C. is committed to it. Even the city of Detroit, with all its economic problems and municipal problems, has more library service in terms of hours than we do in the city of New York. So it really comes down to a matter of priorities. And what are the priorities for the mayor and the city council and doing this? And we've shown over and over again from the city council perspective that we've done the yeoman's work of putting money back into the budget for the library.
But you make a good point. You shouldn't have to be spending so much time trying to just get back to standing up where you are to begin with. We should be moving things forward, obviously.
Right.
It also would allow the libraries and the library staff to be able to plan. Right now we're having difficulty planning for the next year because we don't know how much money is going to be there. How many books can you buy? How many computer services can you give? What are the programs that you can have? How much staff can you have? We also have lots of people who always are wondering, are they going to have a job next week?
Eileen, you make a good point. Who would want to every year face the prospect of getting laid off and call that a career? You know,
right.
That is something from the employee's perspective that really shakes this system every year.
And there's just so many services that performances.
Right. Our program attendance has gone up 40%. Our program sessions have gone up about 27% in all three of the library systems.
Circulation up 59%.
Right,
you say,
right.
Yep.
That's exactly, yep.
It's incredible, and yet we're sitting here fighting just to keep these libraries open.
And what Eileen was saying about programs, there are more innovative and creative ideas coming from the staff.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at what the community wants.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to do programs that the community wants.
Yeah.
But if there's no funding, it kind of puts a crimp on the whole thing.
Yeah. Councilmember, I know, oftentimes parks are one of the first things in the budget that gets cut. Are libraries one of those vulnerable budgets that are quick to be cut and harder to restore?
Absolutely. It always is in the preliminary budget of the mayor. Takes one of the biggest hits is the library service in the city of New York. The three systems that we have here, always a major hit. I don't think I can't identify another institution that has been asked to take $106 million cut.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the game plan here? Are you hopeful that you're going to get back to where you need to be in the budget, and what are the steps that you're taking to get there?
Well, along with the chairman of the Cultural Affairs Committee, Councilman Van Bramer, and the Speaker Chris Quinn, we are standing firm on the fact that the mayor has to come up with a partnership here that the city council, as we've shown in the past, will be willing to put money in. But last year we had to make up $96 million. This year we have to make up $106 million. It's getting more and more. And so the mayor has, and from his side of the budget, has to come and be willing to take up more of this burden, so that we can get as close to a working system as possible, but as stable as possible. So it comes to hardcore negotiations. Certainly, we want to, and part of it is this program. Let the public know what the libraries face, so there can be public pressure on the mayor to negotiate a better budget for the library systems. And we'll be doing rallies, we'll be doing outreaches, and I know that Eileen and Val and certainly John in Queens are working with their unions to get the word out to people also.
And thank you for bringing that up. Where can folks go to learn about this? What should they do if listeners want to, get involved or do something? Should they call the mayor's office? Is there a website they could go to, or how do they show their support?
Yeah, the mayor's office certainly is a good place to start and register. And I believe that Queens every year has a running petition, and certainly if people call my office or Councilman Van Bramer's office, we can give them the information on that. And I believe Eileen and Val, you also do some things during the budget dance with your members.
We get involved with some media campaigning.
Yeah, we sure do.
Yeah, and are these budget cuts, are the problems pretty much the same throughout the boroughs? Are there boroughs who are seeing harder hits? What does it look like, just kind of citywide?
I think
the Queens and Brooklyn system face similar amounts of money, and certainly the numbers in the New York system, which encompass the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island, usually always bigger numbers because of the territory that they cover.
But we're facing about a 17% decline in our in our funding. That's what it was for over the last number of years.
So listeners should keep this in their minds. Look out for the rallies that are happening throughout the city. Call the mayor's office or call Councilmember Gentile or Van Bramer. They'll give you some information. It's really, I think about growing up as a kid, how exciting and fun it was when my mom would take me to the library. I got to learn how to do the little Dewey Decimal System. I think one of my first reports was the state bird of North Carolina. I remember sitting at the tables doing the research. research, and just it really taught me a lot on a lot of levels, and to think that could be undercut, I think that's taken away.
I think many children find that their first trip alone, the first thing that they can do as a little bit of a growing up period is to walk to the library.
Yeah.
Maybe go with their friends and have an afternoon in the library. It's always been a safe, wonderful place for children to allow their imaginations to wander and to develop what's there.
Absolutely.
And it's a great place.
And a learning environment.
Place.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I remember learning how to spell my name to get a library card. I mean, all it, and I think one of the arguments that people try to make in this day and age of technology is that libraries become less and less important because they think that there's less and less use of books, but we would argue quite the opposite, in fact.
Exactly.
Is that right?
We're more than books.
It's a workforce development, as we've talked about, whether it be starting a new business or learning a new trade or finding out more about the business you're in. The libraries have become that. They've become a center for new immigrants to learn the language, to learn different aspects of life in America. They've become senior centers where programs for seniors. They've become centers for teens. They've become centers for kids. They have so many roles to play in our society today that to say that they're irrelevant is absolutely the wrong conclusion to come to.
And simply doesn't understand the points we talked about earlier, where folks needing computer services, needing internet services to get jobs. And I would argue even, as I said earlier, the fact that we have more technology, the fact that we can go searching for information in different venues requires a knowledge base for library science that actually, frankly, is greater perhaps in some ways than it was before.
I agree.
Sure.
I agree as well.
Great.
And certainly the demand for public libraries has increased tremendously over the last years. We are, as I said to you, go to any branch of the libraries, in any one of the boroughs, and you will see people waiting outside the building before it opens up because they need to get in.
It's a meeting place. It's a place for opportunities, educational opportunities, job opportunities.
Correct.
It's a resource for the community, fighting to defend them. Thank you so much, Councilmember Eileen, Val. Thank you so much for coming on Yetta Kurland Live and talking about this.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Please keep us posted. Yes, and good luck with your work. It's obviously very important. We hope you'll get your funding that you need.
Thank you very much, and we hope so as well.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking to David Braun here on Yetta Kurland Live.
WWRL, sharing and celebrating the LGBT community's ideas, energy, and accomplishments.
That's the power and the beauty of New York.
A message of equality and pride.
And we are back here on Yetta Kurland Live. I am in studio with David Braun. But before we go to David, I want to take a call from a listener, Margaret DePaula. She is a parent from the Improved Public Transportation. Margaret's a retired special education teacher and a grandmother, and she wants to call in to tell us a little bit about something that's coming up in the very near future. Margaret, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
How are you?
Okay, fine.
Good. So tell us, what is PITS?
It's Parents to Improve School Transportation. It's an organization that was started about 2.5 years ago when some of the parents got together and were really fed up and disgusted with the way the busing situation was for the children. And they
obviously you're aware that ATU was on strike and is still facing difficulties for the public transportation.
Yes, right now it's just a horrible situation, and we're really frightened about what's going to happen in September.
Well, it's great. I think it's great when we see parents standing up for the workers of public transportation because, we're all in it together.
Oh, yes, we support them, and we support the EPP,
That's
which
great.
they're not going to get.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a grandparent, so it's grandparents. I'm also a retired special education teacher, so I spent over 20 years with wheelchair students all my life. So I'm really concerned about what's going to happen come September.
So quickly,
low bids.
Indeed, and now there are pay cuts that these workers are facing. It's only going to get worse if we don't
they
treat our...
shouldn't pay either.
Absolutely. So what's happening this April 19th? What are you guys trying to do?
Having a rally. It's going to be a rally to save busing, and it's going to be at 65 Court Street in front of the building where the DOE has the contracts division. Now, they keep saying they're not involved in these contracts at all. It's between the bus company and the union, but they have a contracts division there, and they are involved in it. They just lied about that. They are very much involved in all of this. And the rally is going to be Friday, April 19th at 12 noon, 65 Court Street. And we just want to get as many parents and grandparents and anybody concerned, and say maybe some of the drivers and buses can pass by and give us a hunk. And we really want to get involved, a rally to let the mayor know we're really very concerned about this.
Now, the 65 Court Street, that's in Brooklyn, correct?
Yes, it is.
65 Court Street, this next Friday, April 19th
at
12 p.m. Get out to show support for parents, for children, for public transportation workers, and for our community. Is there a website folks can go to?
Yes, we're first of all, we're on Facebook as PISTNYC, and we're on our website, www.pistnyc.org, and we're also on Twitter at PISTNYC.
I love it. Great. Social media. Margaret, thank you for taking the time to call in. Thanks for letting us know. Thanks for doing the work that you're doing, and let us know how it goes.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me call in.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Great. Thanks. All right, so our next segment is David Braun. David has been working to stop fracking for a number of years and is the president and co-founder of United for Action and the lead organizer for New Yorkers Against Fracking, a statewide coalition for a ban. Previously, he was the grassroots coordinator for the film Gasland and designed the outreach plan for soon-to-be-released new installment, the Gasland 2. Is that really the name of the second film, Gasland 2?
Gasland Part 2.
Part 2. Gasland Part 2, yeah. Previously, he was an organizer for Move On and has worked on numerous social, environmental, and economic justice campaigns. We're delighted to have him in studio this evening. If you've got questions or comments about the film Gasland, about hydrofracking in New York, about anything related to this, please call in 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. David, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. Thanks for coming in the studio.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm sure most of our listeners have heard of fracking, but just briefly, what is it and why should we be concerned?
Well, fracking is a process of natural gas extraction that is unconventional. So conventional gas extraction, the gas that we're used to, that I grew up with, was one where you would basically drill into the ground, find a pocket of gas, and the gas, put the straw into the ground, the gas would come up, and there you have your natural gas. This is a whole different beast. They take 5 to 8 million gallons of water. They mix it with about 400,000 pounds of toxic chemicals. They drill into the ground about a mile down, and they drill horizontal in the shale formations where the natural gas is kind of champagne bubbled all throughout the rock formation. So it's not in big pockets. And what they do is they take about this water, this chemically laden water, and they shoot into the ground about 10,000 pounds per square inch to shatter or fracture the rock. So they're shattering the bedrock, and then they explode the bedrock below our feet to release the natural gas. And up with the natural gas comes these chemicals. And the New York City DEP did an analysis of what these chemicals are. And we found out that 33% cause cancer, 43% are genetic disruptors, and 58% are immune suppressants. So these chemicals are very, very dangerous and very toxic. And what we found and why this is so dangerous is that these chemicals and then the heavy metals, the volatile organic compounds that are actually in these rock formations end up making their way into our groundwater and into our aquifers, which is a major problem.
Now, the environmental issues have always been the great, disconnect issue in my mind. How does all of that occur? And then, there's a group of people and companies and a strong business effort to move this forward. How does that disconnect, that cognitive dissonance, how does that exist?
Well, Yetta,
And that's not a rhetorical question. I actually
no.
Maybe it is a rhetorical question.
Well, it is kind of a rhetorical question. So
it's a frustrated question. It's a question. It's not the first time I've asked the question.
Sure. So it is, and rightfully so. I mean, I kind of want to pull out my hair. If I had any left, I'd be pulling it out.
I think you've done that already.
Yeah,
David.
I have.
Yeah,
it's
because
of working on this issue, among others. But
David Braun is bald because of the fracking
issue. That's right. Well, it was healthcare that did it to me before this, and now it's but
it's a good look for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It's one of the
positives.
The only positive byproduct of fracking.
Yeah. Well, the thing with that is it comes down to money. The most powerful.
Shocking.
Yeah, Exxon is the largest company in the world, and a few years ago, an article came out in the Wall Street Journal. And I don't often take my talking points from the Wall Street Journal, but I thought this one was too good to pass up. Mm-hmm. They talked about how Exxon cannot drill and find new reserves faster than they're actually extracting oil. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, they purchased a company for about $32 billion called XTO. Now, Exxon is the most powerful, largest company worth the most money in the entire world, right? Apple used to hold that place, but it's now since fallen. So then we're dealing with the most powerful industry in the world. And, I mean, everyone sees the commercials. Everyone hears how clean natural gas is. Well, It couldn't be further from the truth, actually. And even just in terms of climate change, we are now finding out from Cornell scientists and from other scientists that actually natural gas for the environment, just from a climate change perspective, forget all the environmental, detriment that occurs and the water contamination, that just from a climate change perspective, that natural gas is actually worse than coal for climate change because methane is 33 more times greenhouse gases than carbon dioxide. Another thing that's going on with the gas industry and how this is allowed to proceed is they have the American Petroleum Institute has hired, I believe it's Hill and Knowlton, who is the PR firm that handled tobacco starting about in the 1950s. And it's all actually in Josh Fox's film The Sky is Pink, where all they have to do is basically cast doubt, right? So we bring in our experts, right? We bring in independent scientists who say, this is a really bad idea. You really shouldn't be doing this. And then, of course, they have their paid experts. Right. And as a matter of fact, one of their paid experts looks like he either may have been or is about to be confirmed for Energy Secretary for the United States. Wow. And this is a guy, Ernest Moniz, who's taken tons of gas industry money. And now is going to be the Energy Secretary for the United States. So what they do is they put their experts that are paid experts next to our experts. Now, what happens there? Well, these experts, all they do is they cast doubt, right? So our experts come out and say it's dangerous because you have these well casing failures and these chemicals and all of these issues and, look at all these different health impacts that are occurring in the place. And their experts come out and go, no, it's safe.
Right.
So all of a sudden you have.
And there's no conflict of interest laws or anything.
That's the unfortunate thing about the internet's done so much for us, right? But one of the unfortunate things it's done is the reporting that goes on in the news now just isn't what it used to be. You don't have reporters that really dig so much anymore. So reporters get lazy. So they write a story and they get one quote from one side and then they get another quote from another side and then they conclude, well, the facts are in debate.
You are listening to David Braun of United for Action on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. Call in with questions of your own, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. David, it is hard to talk about this stuff because sometimes it feels so overwhelming and it is the man against the machine or these incredibly powerful industries. How do you make the discussion on fracking hopeful, energizing, sexy? How do you get people talking about it?
Well, that's a good question, Yetta. It's actually, it's
other than shave your head.
Other than shave
and
your
look
head.
Sexy.
Well, yeah. God bless you. Thank you so much. There's actually a report that just came out from a Stanford University professor, and his name's Mark Jacobson. And he, back in 2009, he with a gentleman from UC Davis had laid out a plan of how we can be 100% on renewables around the world by 2030. Well, he just actually individualized that plan and made it very, very specific. in New York, where we can now be on renewables in 17 years. By 2030, we can be 100% on renewables, meaning that we can be powering our lives, right? That everyone listening to this radio station, that all of these lights that we're sitting under right now, that everything that we're running at home, everything, our heating, our cars, everything can be running on renewable energy that does not poison people. And it's a funny thing because we've all just gotten in, we grew up in this kind of this carbon nation, right? We grew up just kind of naturally assuming like, oh, that's a car. It spits out toxins which kill me, and I'm just going to hope that I don't get cancer, right? But we grew up kind of drinking the Kool-Aid with this assumption that like this is what we have to live with, that this is our fate. And the reality is no, this is not our fate.
Or that we can drink the Kool-Aid and magically nothing's going to happen to us and it's just going to,
Well, that's the denial, right? So, and that's what we see in communities where this gas drilling is happening. Right. So that in places where this gas drilling is happening, people who start saying, well, my water's been poisoned actually now start getting treated as if they were the perpetrators. Right. So the people who are having their water poisoned or are suffering health impacts and having their hair fall out or whatever start getting targeted by people in those communities because those are people who are in total denial and don't want the money train to stop. Right. Because it's the money train.
Yeah.
So.
Right. The seduction is also that they're dangling all sorts of money
all
for these
sorts
people
of money.
to be able to come onto the land.
They're ripping up these communities and this whole thing. But it's horrible that these people who are getting poisoned are the ones that are being treated as if they were the ones actually doing the poisoning. So, but it's
should be called killing the messenger. I'm assuming we're intimating. I don't want you to get into the movie too much, but is this a little bit of what some of the topics that you're going to be seeing in Gasland Part 2?
Well, yeah. Gasland Part 2 is going to be a very exciting film. I've had the opportunity to see it a couple of times, and I'm really thrilled to see it. It's going to be premiering at the Tribeca Film Festival on April 21st, and then we'll be going into a wider release on HBO sometime this summer.
That is exciting.
I'm hoping for earlier than later. And in Gasland 2, we're going to see a lot, and there's a lot of really damning evidence against the gas industry there. You just see lots of folks who are suffering. So we get a window into kind of the continued contamination that's going on in this country. And the thing I thought was, very impressive is that, Josh Fox does a great way of including all walks of life or showing that this affects all walks of life. So you see, it's not just a Democrat or Republican issue or whatever it is. It's that, everybody's being affected by this, and it's some really tragic effects that are occurring. So you see the continued contamination that goes on in these communities where this gas drilling is happening. But he also takes us into a window of what's happening in our political process that would allow something like this to happen, right? Because polluting industries are polluting industries, right? That we know. But our EPA is supposed to save us, right? It's supposed to keep us safe, right? And then, so, you get some really great interviews and, you hear from people like Lisa Jackson and other folks throughout the film, and you start to get a window of like, oh my goodness. And, you hear from some of these politicians there, and it really just makes you kind of scratch your head.
Yeah.
Or maybe it doesn't. We know how much money and, organizations like 350.org are really good about, sharing with us how much money these politicians are taking from the oil and gas industry, you know, how much they're spending not only in commercials, but in paying lobbyists. There's some, crazy thing that there's like 2 oil and gas lobbyists for every congressperson in Washington.
So speaking in their language, is that the problem with renewable energy sources? Is the problem that it can't be commodified, that it's not an ongoing financial economic opportunity in a market-driven society?
Well, let me take a step back from that. Is that I think it's really more of a thing where the oil and gas industry hasn't found a way to kind of corral it and market it themselves, right? Because basically anybody can produce solar panels, and anybody can, once I start plugging in my electric vehicle into my solar panels, Exxon doesn't have a hold of me anymore.
Right.
Either does Shell, either does BP, and these are the companies that are fracking, right? So they're trying to diversify their market by moving into this because why? It's a centralized distribution system, right? You have to buy their gas that comes to you, through these pipes, right? They work with these various companies that build these Spectra or whoever it is that's building these pipelines. It takes these crew, they have the geologists on staff, right? They have the different, pipeline folks and the various folks that do the drilling. These are big teams of people who industrialize areas that they go into.
Yeah.
once they get renewable energy moves forward, they don't have that corner on the market anymore. They're not the big guys on the block anymore. All of a sudden, it's like this level playing field.
Right.
And so they're doing what they can do.
Sounds like socialism, David. I mean, I'm joking and I'm being a little irreverent, but seriously, I mean, we all agree that I think we agree that environmental issues are I really think we got to deal with this. I don't think you'll disagree with me. Obviously, it's your life's work. But if what it takes is formatting it in a way where capitalism can get its teeth in. I mean, that's what we saw. It was a great tool for marriage equality. It was a great tool for a lot of other movements. Maybe what we need to do is figure out a way where there's a way to charge $9.99 every month for a solar panel. I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but maybe is that?
Well, that's already happening. I mean, companies like Solar City or Sungevity are already doing this, where you can basically, if you have the right location in your house, and if you don't have too many trees surrounding your house, they'll come out and you can lease, basically you can do a solar lease. They put the solar panels on your roof. You get your energy for a discounted price. You can feed the rest back into the system, and it's something that doesn't cost you anything.
But of course, the problem is it's the difference between getting really rich and really, really, really rich. And as long as you can get really, really, really rich with non-renewable energy sources, you're always going to have the push for that. Well,
and it's also a good many other factors, right? So the market supports this. I mean, again, who's doing? When the economy crashed back in 2008, who was doing the best? Right? Exxon, Chevron, all these companies. They're making
prime mortgage companies weren't doing that poorly either, though.
Well, and it's funny because actually we're seeing that same bubble right now with these gas leases. So, and we've seen Chesapeake doing those things, and actually, and the people that are underwriting these deals are a lot of Wall Street banks. So we see Goldman Sachs, or we see Chase actually underwriting, flipping these leases, and we hear people from like Chesapeake Energy saying, "Listen, I've leased this land for $1,000, but if I can flip it and sell it to China for $14,000, well, then all the better for me." Well, that means, though, we're going to be fracking the heck out of this country for gas for China, which is the most absurd thing that's going on. But the banks are behind it. The oil companies are behind it. And you get the banks and the oil companies together, some little podunk grassroots organization isn't really going to be able to do a whole heck of a lot. Well, unless you're, New Yorkers Against Fracking or Americans Against Fracking, and you get 200 organizations in New Yorkers Against Fracking that start building power and getting businesses involved and getting all sorts of different elected leaders involved. Tomorrow we're having a press conference at City Hall, which I'd love for you to come to if you're going to be available. We're going to have elected leaders all speaking out against fracking. We're going to have Bill de Blasio there and John Liu there and all sorts of other folks that are going to be showing up to say this is a really dumb idea. And we've got faith leaders against fracking. We've got chefs for the Marcellus, people.
That's what time tomorrow?
It's going to be noon at the City Hall steps tomorrow.
Steps to City Hall. Speaking truth to power, you are listening to David Braun here on Yetta Kurland Live, breaking down business here in the United States and around the world, talking about fracking. David, we have a bunch of callers. Let's try to get to some of them. Let's go to Brian from Manhattan. Brian, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air. Are you with us, Brian?
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is really, what is the holdup that's preventing Governor Cuomo from taking action on this? It's really this overwhelming, catastrophic evidence coming in from Pennsylvania and nearby states. And what can we do then as citizens to just make sure we're putting additional pressure on his administration to really act? If you can kind of speak to those 2 points.
Sure.
So there's a number of reasons why this is being held up.
I was going to ask you about Cuomo, so I'm glad that our caller brought it up.
Yeah. So I think Cuomo's in a tough position.
I do too, and I got to say, well, go ahead.
There are laws on the books actually in New York State which force his hand to move forward with extracting minerals and oil and gas. So he's not in the best position. What can you do? Let me get to that part first. Go to unitedforaction.org. Go to nyagainstfracking.org. Sign up. Send a message to Governor Cuomo. Sign up on our email list. You'll get involved in some of the work that we're doing. You'll get updates on what you can do. Additionally, we have a website that's called callcuomo.com. On it, you'll see that there's not only ban organizations like myself, but there's also big green organizations that want to also stop this process or slow this process down from moving forward. It's a whole host of organizations that are signed on to this. We've got a call campaign going into Cuomo to keep the pressure on Cuomo. for the rest of the month to the end of April. In addition, if you go to another website, don'tfracknewyork.org, there's actually this thing called the Pledge to Resist Fracking, which about 7,000 people, including Arun Gandhi, who's Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, and people like Mark Ruffalo have signed. And what it says is they pledge to do direct action as their conscience leads them in the event that the governor decides to move forward with fracking. So it's really creating some sort of consequence, and a lot of people that are pledging to do outright peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience. So that would be a really terrible thing for the governor, and I'd hate to see something like that happen. I personally think the governor is a pretty decent governor. He's brought us gay marriage. He's, got us gun control. He's done a lot of good things for us.
Fingers crossed for clean elections.
Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely something that he's also championing.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'd have to be working so hard against this if we had clean elections in this state, that we wouldn't see a guy like, Tom Libis, who's taken $200,000 from the gas industry and is the biggest fracking cheerleader in the state, pushing it as hard as he is. Now, let me just answer the other part of the question. Why is this, still moving forward? Well, the landowners groups, which basically represent the industry, are threatening to sue the state with what they call takings lawsuits, saying that they won't be able to make money off something they should make money on. And, you figured also that they would be suing the state to be, able to put on, something like crystal meth labs on their land as well. I mean, it's equally as toxic and pretty dangerous for the community, right?
It's an interesting comparison.
I mean, it's kind of, they might be going a little far, but not so much. But that's really the reason why this is going forward, and there's a lot of pressure on the governor from the gas and oil industry. I'm going to try to squeeze
it. We got bunches of people calling in. I'm going to try to squeeze some of them in because we only have a few minutes left. Let's go to Emma from Lower East Side. Emma, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You are on the air.
Can you speak up, Emma? It's tough to hear you.
Oh, I'm saying, okay, with the hurricanes that came in, and now we have a lot of those pipelines that are coming into New Jersey and Staten Island and Rhode Island.
Yep.
And it doesn't seem that people realize, is that going to be carrying fracked gas?
Indeed it is. And actually there's a major concern.
It's a very good question.
It is a very good question. And it's actually a major concern. We're going to be having on the 14th of May, we're going to be having a radon forum because the gas that comes out of the Marcellus Shale is extremely radioactive, and it's laced with radon, which is the number one leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. And so there's major concerns that as these pipelines are built and this gas is piped in, say directly from Pennsylvania, because it's not going to be pumped in from New York because we're going to block it here. But as it's pumped in directly from Pennsylvania, it's going to be carrying this radon-laced gas, and it's going to be causing lung cancer. And, New York City kitchens aren't particularly well ventilated, and people are going to have these ticking time bombs going on in their kitchen. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to also stop this and block this infrastructure build-out. And aside from that, they're looking at spending like $700 billion in infrastructure build-outs between pipelines and new power plants. And again, if we can move towards renewables, isn't the shortest distance between 2 points a straight line? Why the heck are we spending all this money in building out this infrastructure that's going to be obsolete when this gas is gone? They only estimate that we've got 22 years of gas in the ground. So what are we doing building out $700 billion worth of infrastructure for 22 years worth of gas? Let's move to renewables now. So great question. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, and it's also great that she's talking about post-Sandy New York, where we're drilling and bringing in Spectra pipelines. I'm going to squeeze in one last caller, super quick. Ed from Jamaica. Ed, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Yeah, good evening. How y'all doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, basically, I'm not particularly for frack gas, but I know a lot of people that live up in the Marcellus upstate region where they're proposing this, and I just had a question for your guest. One of the selling points that the industry is using, the gas industry, is the economic growth up there. A lot of those areas are economically depressed, and even though it may be short-sighted, a lot of people don't have jobs. They can't eat, they can't feed their families, and with the promise of industry coming up there, the promise of the infrastructure build-out, I don't know.
You're making a really good point.
Yeah,
any truth to it, you know, or are they just trying to pull the wool over the people's eyes?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think David touched on that a little bit earlier with the fact that it's easy to seduce people when, you know, they're trying to put food on their tables. And we're mostly out of time, but we could actually, you know, there are alternatives to that people have been talking about, yogurt production, beer production, all sorts of things.
Wine farming, instituting these things. And additionally, the best jobs actually don't go to the people here in the state. They fly in out-of-state drillers for the best jobs, the guys with the highest pay. So what people are going to get is security guard jobs paying $8 an hour on these drill rigs. Additionally, the jobs aren't sustainable. This is boom and bust. We're looking like a 10-year cycle of these jobs coming in, and that's it. So, you know, don't believe the hype of these jobs. We can get a lot more jobs with renewable energy and solar farms and whatnot. 12
p.m. at the steps of City Hall. David, thanks for coming on air with us.
Yeah, thanks so much. God bless you. Great to be here.
Tune in next week on Yetta Kurland Live here on Wednesday night, WWRL 1600 Equality Pride Radio.
The preceding program was independently produced. The views and opinions expressed were those of the program host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WWRL, its staff, or management.